this tutorial, we will cover using Vray in the studio computers alongside with Rhino, giving a basic breakdown to the Vray UI and how to set up a basic render. So to begin, open Rhino. First thing to do is to select Vray as the renderer. So to select it, go to the top ribbon under Render, to drop down Current Render Vray for Rhino. This way, your Rhino will select Vray as the rendering, and it will allow you to use some of the Vray tools. And if you've watched any YouTube tutorials, you're wondering where are the buttons for Vray. This you need to configure your user interface to have Vray. You can go down to toolbars, and under toolbars, in the drop down, search for Vray for Rhino, and for this tutorial purpose, we will select all of them. Once you have opened all of the Vray menus, I find it's a good habit to attach them to the top ribbon so that you always have access to them. And another good habit is to set up some additional ribbons on the side. So if you click down to toolbars and find material, properties, material, and rendering. Render tools. It's also a good habit to configure the side banner to have some of the tools that you'll be using for your rendering. Some of the good ones to have is lights, materials, sun, and rendering. And sometimes when you load into a new computer and you go, oh my god, I can't find any of the Vray buttons, then just repeat the previous few steps, select Vray as your current renderer, and then under the toolbars, reselect all the Vray tools. Now we'll go through the basic Vray UI and what the tools mean and how to access all of the Vray settings and materials and lights and so on. So once you've got all the ribbons set up, under the Vray All, this houses all of the tools under Vray, ranging from rendering to lights to materials and some other settings. I recommend having all of the ribbons open despite all of these buttons being available in Vray All. This is handy for when you've done a 7-hour Rhino session and then you can't find where the interactive rendering button is, then you can follow these headings and go, okay, rendering, okay, it must be one of these, instead of trying to figure out which one it is. Again, it's you'll get used to it once you use it more, but I find it handy by having these ribbons up here. And when using Vray to render, this button, Asset Editor window, this will be your best friend. This essentially is the main command center for Vray. Remember, Vray is a plugin, so a lot of the settings will need to be changed through Vray Asset Editor. And this is very simple to find. Vray All ribbon, the leftmost circular button. And once you're in here, remember to click on these winged tabs. This will open additional settings for each of the properties that you select on. For example, right now selected on to Rhino document sun, then it will give this drop down. As you can see, there's a lot of settings and tweaks to get into, And that's a strength of V-Ray, that you can customize every little setting. And all of these buttons cover the main basic elements in rendering: material, lights, geometry, and render elements, textures, and setting. So under setting, it's important to look out for camera, render output, and in and material override. And in the camera, you'll be using the exposure value setting to adjust how bright the scene looks, and depth of field setting to add a realistic blur to backgrounds. And another really important drop down is the render output. This will produce the resolution for your rendering. And under the aspect ratio, if you go down to custom and then you unlock the aspect ratio, you can produce custom sized uh, render outputs. And this is really handy for going through different stages of render where you just want a quick overview or a quick sample to what your scene looks like. You can just do a quick 500 times 500 pixels render, where if you're doing the final render, you can bump it up to a high resolution and it will give you the detail. So it's a quick tip to balance performance and speed. And under material override, you can use this button to quickly make all of the materials, turn all the materials off and make it look a certain way. For example, if you're doing diagrams, it's really handy to turn all of your realistic materials off and turn it to white, and then you can edit it in post-production. Now that we covered the basic setting and UI of V-Ray, I will introduce you to Chaos Cosmos. Chaos Cosmos is the web service that Chaos Group offers. That is the company that owns V-Ray. It's a online service that allows for the download of high quality materials and finishes. So it saves time for you finding furnitures to populate your scene with and realistic wood finishes for your model. To access Chaos Cosmos, you can click on the left side of your asset editor or the second button in the V-Ray All dropdown. So if you click on Chaos Cosmos browser, it will launch a browser inside of V-Ray. And oftentimes it will launch in a narrow format. And in that case, just remember to scale it so that it reveals more information on the left. And to access these materials, it requires you a login. And to log in, simply click on this blue icon. Or if you try to download something, it will just force you to log in anyways. But yeah, it leads you into the same location. And don't try fill it in here. It wouldn't work. Go down to continue with Google. And then here you put in your university login. Sweet. So now that you've logged in, when you go back to Rhino, you can see that you can now download the materials. To download is very simple. You can go down to the different material categories, click once to enlarge it so you can see the details of that material. And to use the materials, simply press this little blue icon to download into your local computer. One thing to keep in mind is that this downloaded material will stay on whatever computer that you're using. So to my knowledge, if you log into another computer, you'll have to re-download this asset. But what is handy is that you can use this like icon to save it so that next time when you use it, you can go down to all asset drop down and then select light, and then it will appear here. So you don't necessarily need to download everything to save the ones you like. You can simply like them and then come back to it later once you log in to your university account. Again, there are many categories in here, uh, like HDRIs, other materials that's not standard to the V-Ray materials, and different objects. Again, all of these will be correctly set up for V-Ray, and it will be a simple drag and drop.